Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Empower You. My name is Karen Cartier. I'm one of the board members here at Empower You, and I'd like to welcome you. There are a few other board members here tonight are John O'Neill and Ken Bowman, Betty Overstreet, Jay Grunke's in the back, our producer. Thank you for all that you contribute. If you don't already know, Empower You is a free university intended to educate, for you to enjoy and engage, but donations are appreciated. They enable us to provide more classes and enrichment. If you choose to, you can donate online via our website, via PayPal, or send directly via mail. Our mailing address is on the website, or in person here at the studio. Also, if you have ideas for classes, let us know. Send an email to info@empoweru.org. Now, if you missed any of our classes, our recent classes, you can go to empoweruamerica.org, and on the homepage, scroll down to previous classes. And if you see a button labeled to watch a complete recording of this class, click here, click on that button, and you can view a recording of that class. Giveaways tonight. We have someone. We'll be passing around our little red bucket. If you are able to in the studio, if you can put a couple of dollars in to help, that'd be much appreciated. And Betty's going to help us with our giveaways tonight. The number is 459. American Marxism. No one has 459?
One 459.
1459?
No, wait a minute. That's 595.
59595, the last three numbers. It's a little hard to read. 4595. The last number is very difficult to read. Ooh, well, congratulations.
Pack of Pepsi.
And our other prize is a 12-pack of Pepsi. And if you have the number 4613. Does anyone have 4613? Okay, will you, if you want regular or diet? Okay. You're welcome to. Okay, thank you. Well, you can't say that anymore. You won this tonight.
We have one more door prize to give away to those online. And if you're online, you don't need to do anything because we will choose somebody off the people that are on there. I'll try to remember to announce who that is later, and we will send the book to you, The Patriots.
I don't want to take too much more time because our speaker has, don't want to take time away from our speaker, but I already mentioned past classes available on the website. Remember, the classes coming up include October 7th, prepare for the digital dollar. And that's going to include a talk by Barb Horowitz on nonviolent civil disobedience. and our active killer class on the active shooter type scenarios. And remember that class starts at 6:30 on October the 12th, if you want to sign up for that. That is a virtual class, and it's October 12th. October 14th, we have the Body Snatcher's Wife, and that starts at 7 as the others do. But remember, the active killer class starts early at 6:30. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker tonight, Isaac Addy. He was a speaker at the protest in Columbus last month. He is running for the Lakota School Board. He is a very proud US citizen. He came to America from Nigeria over 18 years ago to provide his family with the opportunities in America that did not exist in his country. The American Isaac came to was one that gave everyone an equal chance to succeed. Isaac believes that if you take advantage of the opportunities and work hard, you fulfill your dream. His family has taken advantage of the opportunities America offers by getting a strong education and working hard. America is a country that rewards those who are prepared and are willing to work every day to achieve their own American dream. In America, we are all given the chance to achieve our dream. While Isaac loves his country of birth, he also loves the country he chose so many years ago, America. His family and he are examples of what can happen if you get a good education. Isaac is a business administration graduate of Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria, Nigeria. Without further ado, Isaac, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here tonight. It's an opportunity that I will never take for granted. I never believe little me will be standing in the university to give a speech. It's an honor, and I really, really appreciate. Thank you, Empower You. The good book says that people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. You are what you listen to, and the knowledge you have empowers you. That's why I like this organization. Thank you so much for inviting me. I want to tell you a very little story quickly so that you make you laugh, relax. It also relaxes me. When I see you smile, it gives me energy. When we were coming to the United States 18 years ago, we landed in Detroit. So while we were descending and we were landing, we came in January, there was snow everywhere. So my daughter looked down the plane and tapped me on my leg and said, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy." I said, "Yes, Kendra, what's it?" She said, "Look down." I said, "What do you see?" She said, "America is sweet." I said, "What do you mean by that?" He said, "Look down, there is sugar everywhere, even on top of building." So anyway, so that's what America is. America is the greatest country in the planet, the greatest country in the world. And take it or leave it. If you don't want to live in America, there are many other countries you can move to. But I chose to come here because this is the greatest country, and this is the country that gives opportunity to everybody that can work hard. The American dream can be achieved if you can work hard. When I came, before I go into my notes, when I came, I read through the national anthem, and one of the places that caught my attention is, it says, "The land of the free," which is, everybody's comfortable with that, but the home for the brave. You have to be brave to live in this land, even though it's free. You have to be brave. You have to take risk. You have to decide that, you know what, I want to be something great. And if you do that, opportunities are there for you. Thank you so much, Empower You, for inviting me. Ladies and gentlemen, my name again is Isaac Addy. I'm an immigrant from Nigeria. I became a US citizen in 2008. I'm here this morning to wake you up, to fight against the Marxist ideology called critical race theory. We have to fight against it. Critical race theory is divisive, is poisonous, is evil, and is un-American, and must be stopped before it destroys the America and the American dream that we all have. One of the tenets of CRT is America is a systematic racist country. This creates and embraces prejudiced views of other people based on their skin color. The result is a great divide with victimization on one hand and defensiveness on the other hand due to guilt and suspicion. This Marxist ideology is false and contradicts Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech, which says, I have a dream that one day my little children will not be judged by the color of their skin, by the content of their character. This speech is embraced worldwide. This dream, in my personal opinion, was realized when America overwhelmingly voted the first African-American president, Barack Obama, for 2 terms, not only 1 term. He served for 2 terms. So if America was really a systematic racist country, I wonder why Barack Obama was voted. If the first time was a mistake, then he wouldn't have been voted for the second term, but he was voted 2 terms. So which, to me, my personal opinion, already defeated that tenet that says that America is a systematic racist country. Whether America or Barack Obama did well or not is another topic that we need to talk about next time, but that destroys that ideology. CRT divided people by race and against each other. CRT was used in brainwashing students in colleges and universities for decades, now being brought down to indoctrinate grade schools. CRT teaches that Black people are oppressed and white people are oppressors. This is an indoctrination, not education. This ideology will damage and remove the American dream of future hope in our children. I believe in the scriptures. The Bible says in Proverbs 13, verse 12, that hope defies, make the heart sick. No wonder suicides and school shootings against students is on the rise in America lately. You know why? When you tell a child that you don't have a hope, you don't have a future, you have destroyed him. And because of that, why should I be alive? And why should I allow anybody else to be alive? They teach these kids against each other. Can you imagine a 4, 5, 6, 7 years old being an oppressor against somebody else? They don't know nothing. If you put kids together in this room, irrespective of their gender, their color, or wherever they come from, even if they cannot speak same language, just leave them in this room. In a few minutes, you will see that they will look around to find something that is in common, and you begin to see them play. I strongly believe that this is a plan. They have been planning this for a long time to destroy this nation, to destroy the greatest country in the world. Because if you want to destroy any group of people, you want to destroy a nation, indoctrinate their children. It's just a matter of time. 15 to 20 years, you will not recognize that country anymore. That is the plan. And we have to wake up and we have to stop it. My dream was to raise my children in a decent home to provide them with good education. Since Nigeria could not provide me that, my journey to pursue my dream in America began 18 years ago, like we said, when the opportunity presented itself to me. Within 4 years of arriving in this great country, My dream of owning a decent home was achieved. This cannot happen anywhere. For 39 years in Nigeria, I could not afford a decent accommodation for my children. 4 years of arriving in America, I was able to purchase a home in Westchester. How about that? Westchester. I was able to buy a 4-bedroom home in Westchester, Ohio. My children, for the first time in their lives, had individual rooms allocated to them. And within 15 months, I obtained my master's degree in business management. I know I was introduced. I have a bachelor's degree in business administration in Nigeria. And because I also believe that I need to prove to the United States that I can do anything, because with education, you can do anything, you can pursue your dream. So I applied for my master's, which I couldn't do in Nigeria. Within 16 months, I obtained my master's degree in business management here in the United States. Colorado Technical University was where I got my master's. All my 3 children are graduates of Lacora West High School, and 2 had obtained their bachelor degree and also master's degree. And the youngest is currently attending University of Cincinnati. America made me a happy man. The American dream of hard work plus opportunity can be attained by every hard worker with a dream, the land of the free and a home for the brave. Unfortunately, today, such opportunities my children enjoyed just a couple of years back is slipping away with the indoctrination of CRT in our schools. I feel obligated to fight against CRT as my own way of giving back. I want to give back. One of the things that I know I have been doing in the past 14 years is I'm in prison ministry. I go to prison and I go to jail every Sunday between 8 and 9 a.m. I'm in Butler County Jail, or I am at Warren Correctional Institute speaking to inmates, mentoring people that already made the mistake of their lives, try to help them get them back in the community. Last Sunday, I was with a group of people. When I begin to talk to them, I begin to share with them the opportunity they still have after serving their term. Most of them were weeping. Most of them were telling me, nobody has ever spoken to me like this. So it's my way of giving back. Why do I do this? It's because I know my parents didn't grow up. I didn't grow up here. My parents didn't pay taxes. None of them went to the military or fight to defend this country. But I'm enjoying the America like everybody else. Everybody treated me with love. Everybody treated me with respect. Every opportunities are there for me. And I can see I'm living my best life. So I believe I owe America more. And that is why I do what I do. And that is why I also go to prisons to speak to inmates, motivate them, encourage them to see that nobody hates them. They made their mistakes. They can turn and make their life better. So, and that is why I do what I do. So I feel obligated to everyone, and I'm running. And because of that, I'm also running for Lakota School Board. America, wake up. We are sleeping on the wheel. If we do nothing, in few years, the American dream will be destroyed. Let's fight together to stop this evil ideology coming all the way from Washington, D.C. Critical race theory is going to divide this country, it's going to destroy this country, it's going to put us against each other. And what they do is, when you are busy fighting each other, they are busy over there sharing the national cake. So what you want to do is fight it with all your life. This is the reason why I do what I do. I solicit assistance to everybody that wants to help me. The journey has just begun. I'm going to do whatever I can to let people know. One thing that most of you don't know is You have never experienced life outside this country. A lot of people that are against this, they call us names, is because they have never experienced anything different. Nothing different. I have a first-hand experience where growing up, we have dictators. Whatever they decide, the government controls production method. It's only what they want you to have that you have. You have to belong to a community that is either at the top or you get nothing. But I came to this country, that did not happen to me. And today I live a happy man. So my goal is to wake every American up. We need to fight against critical race theory. Thank you so much, everyone.
Isaac, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
You know, the protest in Columbus was on September 21st, and we already had our calendars printed and everybody's name on it. And Dan got in touch with me and he said, hey, I heard somebody in Columbus that I think we need to have in to talk, even though our calendar's already printed. And I said, Dan, you know I'll support anybody that you think should come in. So Isaac was our guy. We did not know about him until the 21st. And so true what you have to say about Americans have never lived anywhere else. Mm-hmm. Americans are a spoiled people in many ways. And I don't know, did you hear today that the DOJ is getting involved with parents who are going to the school board meetings and protesting? Yes, they're now calling the parents that are going to the school board meetings terrorists.
Wow.
Did you ever think in America that something like that would happen? I didn't.
Free speech.
Free speech. We appreciate you being here and giving your thoughts and telling us what you're doing to fight back. And I hope a lot of us get behind Isaac.
Thank you so much. If you have any question, my email address is Isaac44 as a number, Lakota@gmail.com. Isaac4 Lakota@gmail.com. Email me your questions because I know we have control of time. I would have loved to take questions because I know a lot of people have questions. Send me email, whatever you want to hear from me, I will respond. Thank you so much. I want to thank you, empower you for inviting me. I appreciate it. God bless.
Our next speaker is Mike Gonzalez is our main speaker tonight. He is a senior fellow at the Heritage Foundation. He writes on critical race theory, identity politics, diversity, multiculturalism, assimilation, and nationalism, as well as foreign policy in general. He spent close to 20 years as a journalist, 15 of them reporting from Europe, Asia, and Latin America. He left journalism to join the administration of President George W. Bush, where he was speechwriter for Securities and Exchange Commission Chairman Christopher Cox, before moving on to the State Department's European Board. He joined Heritage in March 2009. Gonzalez is a widely experienced writer and public speaker and holds a bachelor's degree in communications from Boston's Emerson College and an MBA from Columbia Business School. He was a member of President Donald Trump's 1776 Commission and is the author of A Race for the Future: How Conservatives Can Break the Liberal Monopoly on Hispanic American, The Plot to Change America: How Identity Politics is Dividing the Land of the Free. And I haven't seen which book you brought in. Is it the BLM, The Making of a New Marxist Revolution? And thanks to Michael, he's given a free copy to everybody in the studio tonight. Thank you so much for that. And also with Mike is Stephanie Cruz. Stephanie is also with Heritage. She's been involved in public policy and political campaigns since 2005. Prior to joining the Heritage Action Team, she worked in the legal field and wrote for Washington Wire, a project of the Franklin Center for Government and Public Integrity. She also previously interned for the Mackinac Center for Public Policy in Midland, Michigan in education policy. Stephanie graduated with a Bachelor of Arts from Hillsdale College in 2012 with a major in politics and a minor in Latin. She grew up near Toledo, Ohio, and currently resides in Cincinnati. Stephanie is going to be helping Michael with questions tonight. And Michael, before you come up, I have one more thing that I need to give away. And this is for Stephanie. Stephanie, Dan saw this picture. And he said he just had to frame this and give it to you. I don't know if you want to open it for everybody. But this is a thank you for the excellent job work that you do for Heritage as well as for the people of Ohio. I hadn't seen it, but it's a picture of her with all of her friends at the FC Cincinnati game. Michael, it's all yours.
Thank you. Is this on? Can you, nope, it's not still not on. Can you hear me? Yeah, you can hear me now, right? So thank you, Betty, and thank you, Jay, for the help you've given me. And thanks all of you for being here. I'm always very humbled when I see that people actually give up watching the Yankees and the Red Sox in the first playoff games of the season to come out and hear me. I have to question your priorities. I'm going to speak to you today for about 35, 40 minutes about critical race theory. It comes from critical legal theory and how that came from critical theory, because I think giving this understanding of this history of ideas helps here. We're in a historical moment now, I believe. By the way, I'm going to time myself because I really don't want to go over 35, 40 minutes far too long. And if I start speaking really fast because I'm trying to finish my presentation, and that happens to me a lot because I'm Cuban and I'm from New York, and it's a really bad combination, go like this because my wife tells me, everybody tells me. I think we're in a historical moment. I think that this is like my 20th city in the last 2.5 months, 3 months. I started in June. That's probably longer than 3 months. I'm bad at math. And I sometimes I got 400 people in Madison and 200 people in Mishawaka, and there are many people online. I think Americans have had it going on, and I'm going to explain to you with why this is now for the first time meeting opposition. And this is why, as Betty said, Merrick Garland, and boy, did we die because he could have been in the Supreme Court. The Attorney General last night announced that he was going to pretty much sic the FBI, have the FBI investigate, look into how he can investigate parents who turn up at school board meetings and talk. And this is as a result of a completely hyperbolic letter sent by the National School Board Association, which is really a very leftist interest group, in which it called them, President Biden, it was a letter to Biden, calling on him to use the Patriot Act, which was written to keep us safe from foreign terrorists, to stop parents and voters turning up at school board meetings and demanding to know what the children are being taught. Let's get on with the presentation, because otherwise it's going to be forever. And as I said, I'm going to give you a history of ideas. This is my book, which you got for free, but it makes a wonderful Christmas present for all the members of your family. And the reason why I wrote it is because I believe we live in a BLM America now. Obviously, the outgrowth of CRT is because of 2020, because of Black Lives Matter, but also the horrendous spike in the murder rate that the FBI finally acknowledged last week, which is 30%, which is the highest since 1776. We have never had a spike of 30% in the murder rate. The highest previous one was 1968, another politically charged year. So, but CRT definitely is a result of the mayhem of 2020. And so let me start talking about critical theory, because it really all comes from critical theory. And even though today, critical race theory is all about race, it actually kind of starts, if it has a start, it's at this meeting in Thuringia, Germany, of European, very white European communists. They're very concerned. The European communists are very concerned. This is 1923, by the way. And they're very concerned in the 20s because the revolutions that Marx and Engels had promised would happen are not taking place. They only took place in the Soviet Union. There was one that was short-lived in Hungary. A Hungarian Soviet was set up. It lasted 300 days. But the German Revolution fails. The Italian Revolution fails. And communists in these two countries begin to ask themselves why. And the question they come up with is that the worker is now oppressing himself. There's a hegemonic narrative, they call it. Italy, we had Antonio Gramsci calling this. They're all really talking to each other. And the worker has bought into the ideas of the oppressor, so that the oppressor, the bourgeoisie, the owner of capital, no longer has to use coercion or the threat of violence to keep the worker oppressed. This is what they're thinking. This is what these communists are thinking. And the worker believes in the family, the worker believes in God, he's religious, the worker believes in the nation state, and the worker believes in capitalism. And in fact, capitalism is so good, is so efficient at providing the material needs of man, at being efficient and at being and at offering conveniences, that this a superstructure has been built that the worker has bought into. They're big believers in the superstructure. I'll get into that. There's an arrow pointing up to one man there, and that's George Lukács, who was the culture commissar of the Hungarian Soviet that I referred to just a minute ago. His innovation was to realize that if you destroy the family, you destroy the state. So his innovation was to introduce school children, K through 12, to sexual depravity, to orgies and so forth. And then there's another guy here, Felix Weil. Felix Weil and they're all wealthy, by the way. They're all very wealthy guys. Their fathers are in textiles. They hate their fathers. They have daddy issues. But this guy, his father owns a factory, a textile factory. So he decides to invest his money in a think tank, which they place at the University of Frankfurt, and it's called the School of Social Research, the Institute for Social Research. We know it as the Frankfurt School. They, as an inside joke, called it Café Marx because they were Marxists. And it's really there that critical theory begins. Max Horkheimer, the third director of the Institute, writes his essay in 1937 called Traditional and Critical Theory. And what he says is traditional theory just maintains the status quo. They really want to overthrow the status quo. They want to liberate. What they believe is liberation. Every time you hear the word liberation, you know it's a communist. If you hear, they never use freedom or liberty because they know they're not promising freedom or liberty. They use liberation. They believe in this narrative of the oppressed and the oppressor, and they want to liberate the oppressed from the oppressor. And this is what critical theory they think will do. It's heavily Marxist. It's also very much Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud believed in sexual liberation. I'm overstating it, but he influences a lot these thinkers. Friedrich Nietzsche, who was a relativist, who didn't believe it was good or bad. Good was what the master class found beautiful, and bad was what the master class found flawed. And obviously Friedrich Hegel, the most important German philosopher, and Immanuel Kant. Horkheimer and his assistant, Herbert Marcuse, who's going to become really important in his talk, believed that the worker is sucked into the consumer culture of capitalism, which defeats his revolution. The worker has false consciousness. Here in 1960, I have a video here of Horkheimer in 1969 explaining in German. This is right before he dies. I think he dies in 71. And he explains that actually capitalism is good at producing material goods. Capitalism, and many of you may speak German, I don't know. I mean, this is Cincinnati, but the subtitles are underneath in English. I'm going to start the video now, Jay.
Der Gesellschaft freier Menschen. Glaubte, dass diese kapitalistische Gesellschaft notwendig über die durch das steigende Elend der Arbeiter bedingte Solidarität sein müsse. Diese Idee ist falsch. Diese
they know
Gesellschaft, in
that.
der wir leben, verelendet nicht die Arbeiter, sondern hilft ihnen zu einem besseren Dasein. Und außerdem hat der Marx gar nicht gesehen, dass Freiheit und Gerechtigkeit dialektische Begriffe sind. Je mehr Freiheit, desto weniger Gerechtigkeit. Und je mehr Gerechtigkeit, desto weniger Freiheit. Der kritischen Theorie, wie ich sie dann auch später noch entwickelt habe, liegt der Gedanke zugrunde, dass man das, was gut ist, also die gute, die freie Gesellschaft, in der Gesellschaft, in der wir jetzt leben, nicht bestimmen kann.
So that's what they set out to do. They set out to tell the worker, you may think you're happy because your material needs are being met by capitalism, but you actually live in awful oppression. And what we want to do is liberate you from this oppression. They stop on objectivity because they want to be committed to liberation. The mission of critical theory was to dismantle that narrative that creates the unjust world and keeps us all subjugated. Let's go on. And I really want, but about a year ago, I was watching The Matrix like at 3 a.m. And it's like, oh my God, this is critical theory. And I have a couple of clips from The Matrix. And I got up the next day and I said, I keep going crazy. Now you're seeing critical theory everywhere. So I sent it to a couple of my colleagues and they said, no, this does explain critical theory. So I have a couple of short clips from The Matrix. So that is their belief, that it is everywhere in everything we do. And that carries on to critical race theory today, by the way. Critical race theory believes that we're systemically racist, as Isaac so aptly put it, and that our oppression is built into all the ordinary business of society. By the way, the earlier video that I had of Horkheimer, it's important to remember, I forget to mention this, that he is saying the more freedom we have, the less justice. And of course, what is justice to him? It's when everybody has the same amount. It's so-called material equality, right? And he's not wrong. Man, they're not wrong. Capitalism gives us freedom. I got up this morning at 3 a.m. I did it because I'm committed to my work, and people work hard to be rewarded. And if you get up early and go to bed late, you expect to be rewarded more than somebody who doesn't work as much. So they're not wrong that if you call justice everybody owning the same, which I don't call justice, but they call justice, you cannot have freedom. And Horkheimer is admitting that. This is also something critical race theorists believe today. That's the reason I showed it to you. The only problem is that the worker, as I said, does not understand it. He does not understand their own oppression. So the transformation, this liberation they promise, can only take place when their eyes have been opened. Otherwise, they're going to continue to be enslaved. This is, again, a feature of critical race theory today. And this is the last clip I have of the Matrix, because I think it explains it again really well. And that is the problem with the European worker. The Third Reich happens in Germany. They come here to the US. They had to escape. A lot of them were Jewish, but they were actually really deeply German. They believe, they studied Hegel. Horkheimer's thesis was on Hegel. As you saw, all the thinkers that I name are Germanic thinkers. In fact, Marcuse studied under Martin Heidegger, who was a member of the Nazi Party and really admired Heidegger. But when they come here in 1934, Columbia University offers them Teachers College, and they come here and they're fascinated by us. They're fascinated by America because we are who we are. We have this huge culture, but they despise us even more than they despise the German worker, because we're even worse than the European workers. We are not interested at all in liberation. We're happy people. They call us a bunch of boors. They write really nasty things about us. They say the American worker is enamored of his split level home and his high five, and he has these stupid movies that he goes and watches. And there's no hope for the American. The American is never going to liberate himself. So they're fascinated and yet repelled by America. After we liberate Germany, Horkheimer and Adorno, two of the main scholars, all the main scholars go back to Germany, escape the capitalist hell that is the United States, but they leave behind Herbert Marcuse. Herbert Marcuse is Horkheimer's assistant, and he becomes really, really, really important to us politically. He heavily influences the New Left. The New Left was this very radical core of intellectuals, activists, and students who, again, influenced by critical theorists, abandoned economic determinism for cultural Marxism. But by that I mean you have to think of the conceptual aspects of society, of the church, of the family. Horkheimer writes a lot about the family, how the family creates authoritarianism. And Marcuse becomes what is known today as the guru of the New Left. But they're looking, the New Left, Marcuse, all of them are looking for a substitute proletariat, because American proletariat, again, is really, really bad at overthrowing capitalism. And Marcuse begins to watch the riots of the 60s. And this takes him back to the riots he had seen in Germany in 1919 and 1918. And he thought then the German worker was going to overthrow the Kaiser and institute a German Soviet. That didn't happen. But he sees and he says, there's something here with the Black population. The Black population is going to be the ticket. This is a substitute proletariat. They have a revolutionary zeal. They don't have a revolutionary consciousness yet, but we Marxist intellectuals can take them there. And this is what he writes. I'm not putting these words in his mouth. He says this over and over, but he says the ghetto population may well become the first mass basis of revolt. Underneath the conservative popular base is, well, you can read it, the persecuted of other races and other colors. And at this time, there is this huge push here in the United States to create minority groups. Hispanics are created out of whole cloth. I remember being in New York when my uncle came home in the mid-70s and say, they're going to start calling us Hispanics. And we were like, what? You know, it is the leftist activists who put pressure on a very reluctant bureaucracy to create the category of Asian Americans, to create the category of Hispanic Americans. And it really is because a lot of these activists are influenced by this thinking, by the New Left, this idea that if you create these categories and you tell the members, this system is awful for you and you need to overthrow the system. And to this day, they continue to do that. Voto Latino, Maria Teresa Kumar, Voto Latino, admits openly that says it's really hard for me because I'm working with these immigrants. She said this last year. I have all these immigrants from Latin America. They believe this is a great system. They immigrated here, and we have to teach them what an awful system America is if they're ever going to overthrow it. This is the birth right here. Marcuse becomes really enmeshed in American politics. He publishes in these times with Daniel Ellsberg, Noam Chomsky, Barbara Ehrenreich. These are all communists and socialists. Barbara Ehrenreich today is a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, and Julian Bond, whom we tend to think of as a very benevolent and benign icon of the civil rights movement, but in fact, he really loved Marx as well, if you read his writings. And so he teaches a lot of people, a lot of young people, including Abby Hoffman, but his start student is Angela Davis. This is Marcuse Brandeis. I don't know if who remembers Angela Davis here? Wow, okay, this is a good group. Angela Davis is still around. She's professor emerita at the University of California system. She's a Black Panther, but she became a Black Panther after this, after she's told about Marcuse. She gets thrown into prison briefly for her role in the killing of a judge. She's a communist. She's a member of the communist. She runs as VP for the Communist Party in the 1980s. And she is taught by Marcuse. And who is she the biggest intellectual mentor of? The Black Lives Matter. There she is with Patrisse Cullors, one of the founders and leaders of Black Lives Matter. She writes the foreword for Patrisse Cullors' book. So you can actually take this contact tracing even further, because as I said to you, Marcuse himself was taught by Martin Heidegger in Germany. I don't understand Martin Heidegger. Don't ask me a question about him. I'm not that smart, but he's a very important, consequential German philosopher who joins the Nazi Party, who's a member, who's the head of the Nietzsche archives. And he is really good friends with Nietzsche's Nazi anti-Semitic sister, who's also a member of the Nazi Party. So you can go Nietzsche, Heidegger, Marcuse, Angela Davis, Black Lives Matter. But before all this takes place, because critical theory really is a Germanic European thing, it needs to be Americanized, and it will be Americanized. And this is critical legal studies. starting in the 70s, law professors and law students who are influenced by the New Left begin to say, it is true, this is superstructure, this whole thing I showed you with the matrix to joke around, it's true, but it's written into the law. It is the people who write the law are powerful and they're wealthy, and they write the law to maintain their power and their wealth. And so they begin to meet in conferences. They challenge the law, the idea that the law is a product of rational thought, or that it is detached from politics. They say the law is an instrument to preserve the wealth for the wealthy and the power for the powerful. And they start holding annual conferences in which they begin to call themselves critical legal theorists, and their field, or critical legal studies. And it is the founding conference. It's held outside of Madison, in Madison in 1977. The main leaders are Duncan Kennedy, Roberto Mangabeira Unger, Robert Gordon, David Kennedy. If you have time and you like to do this stuff, I advise you to read their papers. I do. They're fascinating for the way they thought about America. This is their main godfather of critical legal theory, Duncan Kennedy. And here you see he's giving full credit to Marcuse and the critical theorists for his thinking. And he's right when he says this is in the zeitgeist. This is alive in the ether, the intellectual ether, all of this. They see the law school as a center of ideological opposition to Reagan's America. And something happens. Some of the critical legal theorists are Black or Mexican or Asian American, and they begin to go to the conference. Everything the critical legal theorists are saying, but they have an additional thing. They say, yes, this is all true, what you're saying about the superstructure and is written into the law. They have something else in common. They're all white. All the powerful and rich people are white. And you're not noticing it because you yourselves are white. And you don't see that this is actually white supremacy. And they start to argue fiercely about this. And this is now where we enter critical race theory. This is what the agreement, sorry, this slide is a little bit too large. They agree that the law is a product of the superstructure and by a self-sovereign elite that is skeptical of the law. They agreed that the equal application of the law produces unjust results. It's really this other stuff here, whether the law is meant to uphold white privilege or not. And that is a big point of disagreement. And this is a book which contains, this is like one of the Bibles of critical race theory, is written in 1993. It's actually a collection of essays. They call it the Big Red Book, ha ha ha, big joke, to joke about the, Mao's little red book. They call this the Big Red Book. I suggest that you read it, but they describe really the transition from critical race theory to critical legal theory to critical race theory in this book, especially the preface. And they begin to say to the critical legal theorists, you're basically a white and largely academic organization. And they end up splitting. I don't know what it is about Madison, actually, I do not, but they have a conference in 1989 in Madison, outside of Madison, at a convent of all places. And it is there that the term critical race theory first emerges. They had to name it something. So the Kimberly Crenshaw, who's incredibly important to this day, teachers who are trained in critical race theory, they're studying Kimberly Crenshaw, who's a very important thinker for critical race theory. She's the organizer of the conference. She comes up with the term critical race theory. And here she admits it. Jay, I'm going to start a video now.
Our eventual self-declaration as an offshoot of critical legal studies. We discovered ourselves to be critical theorists who did race, and we were racial justice advocates who did critical theory. So Mari was one of the very few who knew the truth when in 1987, I sent out a call to attend a retreat called New Developments in Critical Race Theory. Only she, Neil Gatanda, Chuck Lawrence, and maybe a handful of other people knew that there were no new developments in critical race theory because CRT hadn't had any old ones. It didn't exist. It was made up as a name. Sometimes you got to fake it until you make it. Then after about
5 years later, Richard Delgado, who's somebody else, somebody here had the book by Richard Delgado. They showed it to me. He gives an interview. There you go. He gives an interview and he says, yeah, we gather at that convent for 2.5 days. There's about 24 of them. Because on a table in an austere room with stained glass windows and crucifixes here and there, an odd place for a bunch of Marxists, and worked out a set of principles. So they don't hide who they are. This is a very important thinker of critical race theory, Richard Delgado. And what they said they had was lived experience, and they tell their white colleagues, get out of the field of civil rights in the law schools. You don't belong here. You don't have the lived experience. You're talented. And Delgado is actually very caustic when he says, he's like, if you stay you're just going to become imperialist, white supremacy. And they end up winning because they evict their white colleagues from the field of civil rights. They use marches. This is really important. They use marches, protests, sit-ins to get law school faculties to hire professors of color, but not just professors of color. What they care about is the belief in Marxism and the hatred of capitalism. For example, Derrick Bell, the other godfather of critical race theory, writes really mean things about Clarence Thomas. When George H.W. Bush appoints him to the Supreme Court, he writes this long essay in which he calls some things that I can't even repeat. I met Clarence Thomas and he's Black. So what matters to them is not that people are Black. What matters to them is that they be Black, but also that they share their Marxist or neo-Marxist ideas. And eventually they win because the critical legal theorists who are white are a bunch of Marxists themselves and they feel guilty. Daniel Subotnick in a paper in 1999 explains it really well. Kratt is what he calls critical race theorists. They condemn them as interlopers or even imperialists. This is Derrick Bell, and these are a series of protests that he held in different universities. The last one was a big one in Harvard. When he eventually leaves Harvard, he tries to get the Harvard Law School faculty to hire Black neo-Marxist critical race theory professors. And this is a crucial one. And he is introduced at this protest by a law school student in 1990 at Harvard. And I have the introduction because I think he did a really good job introducing Derrick Bell. Where do we go? Hang on. Wow, that went really fast. Hang on. Hang on. Okay, here it is. Well, I don't think we're going to be able to. We can't show this one. I'll give you the, I'll kill it for you. It's Barack Obama. It's Barack Obama as a law student in 1990, really scrawny, introducing Derrick Bell. And I show it because I think it's really important. Nope. And I use this clip, not because I think there's a conspiracy out there, but just to show you how powerful this has become, how powerful critical race theory is already becoming. This man is elected president in 2009, 19 years after this protest. And here he is introducing the godfather of critical race theory. And I wish you could see it because Obama looks so young, but you can recognize his voice right away. You can Google it.
Hasn't done it.
So they dominate civil rights discourse. The professors of colors, they dislike free markets. They're either outright Marxists who admit their Marxism, or they make clear that they dislike capitalism. They again want to overthrow what they believe is a systemically oppressive system. It's the same thing, going back to the 1930s and the critical theorists. To them, they see everything through the prism of race. We're America, and race is really important here. There's something else at work. The reason why the workers were not good is because you can change your station in life. I have been poor. I'm comfortable now. People doing capitalism change their station in life all the time. That is what is supposed to happen. And if you're not adding value, you can go down as well. But guess what you cannot change? Your race, your national origin, and newsbreak, your sex. You really can. So they affix the, in these immutable traits, sex, national origin, and sex, because, sex, national origin, and race. It's dominant in the field of civil rights, in the law schools, but it really, let me just see how much, I think I'm okay in time. But it really have a big impact on public policy until 2020. It starts to really have an impact in K through 12 over the last 10 years. I began to write about it when de Blasio, the mayor of New York, appoints Richard Carranza, the mayor of New York City. That's right, the superintendent of public schools. But it's really in 2020 that it jumps university walls and it enters our lives. I say that two bad viruses jumped the lab in 2020, COVID-19 in Wuhan, and CRT here in the United States. And because of the mayhem that we had, it invades, although it enters K through 12 completely. It enters the military, even the houses of worship are going woke and believing in systemic racism and teaching systemic racism and systemic oppression. And the military, I mean, my God. To me, the main problem with critical theory is that it sows distrust in all the main pillars of society. The main problem with critical legal theory is it undermines popular faith in the law. You need deference to the law. You can't just have police and courts and jails. All of us need to believe that you cannot really take a red, even if it's 3 a.m. and there's nobody around. We stay at that red. For society to function, the vast majority of us need to be like that. And critical legal theory destroys that. To me, the most devastating impact that critical race theory has is on the Black family. It really takes individual agency away. It says, this is systemic racism. Unless you overthrow the American system, you cannot really succeed. This is really toxic messages. Whoops. Well, I can just, that's okay. Okay. I'm actually pretty close to the end, so I can just wrap it up. Black Lives Matter is what got us here. This is the reason I wrote a book about Black Lives Matter. They don't go here. Okay, you can see it there. I don't know why you cannot see it here. It doesn't matter. Don't worry, Jay. Don't worry too much about it. You've done great so far. Black Lives Matter. No matter if the media is not telling you this, Black Lives Matter is at the center of what we're living through today. Not only is it behind, is the reason why critical race theory has invaded all our lives, but it also is the reason why we had the spike in the murder rate last year of 30%. The media will try to tell you it's because of COVID. That's not true. The rest of the world had COVID and people getting fired and people they had lockdown. The murder rate went down. And in fact, what we've had with the huge spike in homicides is the Ferguson effect. We saw murders begin to creep up between 2014 in Ferguson and 2019. Okay, great. And here's the toxic message that Derrick Bell, who was introduced so loftily by Obama, he tells Black people never gain full equality in this country. I believe this is false and and disgusting. And to say this to a Black child is a form of child abuse. And that's what critical race theory does. Now, again, I went over BLM and the role they played. This is just some numbers. When people say, well, what happened was spontaneous protests last year, spontaneous riots. No, Black Lives Matter itself tells you in their 2020 impact report that they sent out 127 million emails. That's a lot of emails, 127 million emails with an open rate of 63%. The average open rate for a nonprofit is 25%, from which 1.2 million actions were taken, whatever those actions are. And 24 million people visited the website of BLM-GNF, the Global Network Foundation, which is really Black Lives Matter. If you Google Black Lives Matter, Google takes you there. And unsurprisingly, the Crisis Monitor which is at Princeton, which is pretty sympathetic to Black Lives Matter, says that BLM activists were involved in 95% of the some 633 incidents that it codes as riots, for which we know the identity of the participant. So BLM really causes the mayhem, no matter if the media didn't tell you. Now, I just want these last 5 slides, because what is happening is people, for the first time, Americans are outraged. Critical race theory has been taught, as I've explained to you, has been dominant in the field of civil rights for 30 years, but now is meeting you, is meeting Americans, and is meeting opposition for the first time, because they won in the academy 30 years ago, and they're not used to opposition. This is why the left is so scared that Americans are saying, no, this is disgusting stuff. You can't teach this to my 8-year-old. You can't teach to my 8-year-old that because he's Black, he's never going to succeed, or that because she's white, she perpetuates systemic racism. And this is why Mary Garland is now saying, oh, these could be domestic terrorists. You know, the riots last year were mostly peaceful, but these American parents turning up at school board meetings, which is what they should do anyway, they're going to throw the Patriot Act at them. I think they understand that if they, for example, if they were come to me and say, well, you spoke to that group in Cincinnati, to that group in Mishawaka, or you spoke in Madison, you're inciting this, we're going to, you know, you're inciting terror. No, this is just an attempt to chill debate. We have the First Amendment in this country. We have the right to redress. What we're saying is actually critical race theory breaks the law. It breaks the Civil Rights Act, the Title VI, Title VII, the Constitution, and here are the ways it does it. And if you go to your school and they say, we don't do CRT here, it's just 5 main things that they do that you can just say, yes, you do, that's CRT. One is, I've been talking for 40 minutes now about this, suppression is systemic. It's the system that does it. It's not so racism is not an individual sin. Racism is something that happens in the ordinary business of society. And that Richard Delgado writes that. And they claim that it is embedded in America's legal system and everything it does. Critical race theory also teaches that some behaviors belong to a race. So they will tell, some of them will tell a Black child, well, love of literacy, love of numeracy, love of punctuation, love of punctuality are white things. Again, disgusting. You know, these are things that the KKK would have said years ago, and now it's being said to our children in our schools with our tax dollars. Anything that says that, to tell them it's critical race theory. What you're doing is violating the law. This idea that white people are born with unearned privilege. I travel the country a lot. I have been to places in Iowa where the meth rate is 90%, or in really depressed places in the Ozarks. This idea that every white person has a white premium, and this is what prevents white people from uniting with Black workers to overthrow capitalism. This is pure classic critical race theory. Anything that talks about in this manner is critical race theory. Don't let any DEI program, that's diversity, equity, and inclusion, that compels students and employees to believe the stuff is first of all, it violates the First Amendment, and second of all, is critical race theory. By the way, I spell it differently. I say diversity, inclusion, and equity, DIE. Here, it's another idea that meritocracy is a myth, that the criteria being used to judge success is just a front for white culture and supremacy. This is also critical race theory. And the last one, which I see you have a sign here, this new meaning, corrupt meaning of the word equity. Equity is a fine word, but in their system, in their lingo, equity means the opposite of equality. It means that the government must treat individual Americans differently because of their race. And you see President Biden, a career politician who for 40 years never showed any interest in this, never uses the word equality anymore. And sometimes the teleprompter has equity and he mispronounces it. He says equality. He backs up on himself. He goes, equity. And he's signing into law bills that say that farmers can get support for loans, except if they're white farmers. If they're white farmers, they cannot get this special benefit. But if Oprah shows up, or Ted Cruz for that matter, because you're supposed to be a member of an oppressed category. If they show up and they're farmer, they cannot get, that they can get, even though they're wealthy and powerful. This is the last of the points that I was going to make. Stephanie, who's going to join me now here because she's an activist. She works for Heritage Action, our sister organization. And in your questions you may have, you can see I can answer these questions, but if you ask an activist style question, Stephanie's much better at it. But Stephanie, no, come on, join me now. She has a booklet there that tells you how you can come back to us, email us to figure out what other things are critical race theory, so you don't let the teachers and the principals, the school boards, or HR gaslight you. This is it. This is my presentation. Thank you very much. You've been a wonderful audience, and I thank you. And now Stephanie and I will subject ourselves to your questions.
If you have a question, please raise your hand so I can bring the microphone to you. And if you're online, just drop to the bottom of your screen to the Q&A and put your question in there.
The points that you made in the last.
I can't hear you, sir. Go ahead. There you go. She's got another one. Jay, these things happen across the country. You're doing a wonderful job.
Testing.
Yeah, go ahead.
The points that you made in your last few slides. Hello?
There you go.
The points that you were making with the last few slides, are those available either in your book in some form, or is there a way to pull some of those off so that they can be used as explanations to people? All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Who else?
Anyone else have a question? Mike, I would like to ask you, as long as this goes way back to the 20s, as long as this stuff's been going on, what do you see the future? Do you see us coming out of this?
So I started in the 20s. A lot of people started with Hegel, and actually you can see how people started with Hegel, but then you can get into a big fight with some scholars who say, no, it started with Kant in the 1700s. I think it starts really with Marx in 1848. I'm 61 years old. I'm going to be fighting Marxism and communism for the rest of my life. This is a bad idea that will not go away. This is a bad idea that has produced millions of deaths. This is a bad idea that has never produced a single loaf of bread. It's only produced bread lines. As Isaac said earlier, this is a wonderful country. We're not perfect. You know, we're not a perfect country by any means. But I have lived as a foreign correspondent at least a year in 7 countries, and we're pretty good. We have it pretty good here. And the people who say we live under systemic racism or systemic oppression, as Isaac said, have just never traveled. And yet, there are people who, you know, I mean, I do this as a thought experiment sometimes, because I don't want to think that anybody embraces evil. And I actually do think that they look at the inequality of capitalism. The fact that you go through places, you drive through places in America where people live in poverty, and then you drive through other places where people are very wealthy and live in luxury, and they say this is unjust. This should not happen. Or the fact that a lot of food at the supermarket rots, for example, and they say we shouldn't have this, and there's got to be a better way. I think that capitalists, I happen to be pro free markets. I believe that for all its faults, it's produced the greatest wealth that we ever had. But there's always going to be people who believe that other stuff. And so I think we're going to be fighting this for a very long time. And they look at here in the US, they look at the racial disparities. There are racial disparities. And they say these racial disparities must be because of systemic racism. Again, what I would say very quickly, because I don't want to make this answer super long, is if you look at blacks as a monolithic group and whites as a monolithic group, then that's wrong. Because if you break down blacks, for example, Isaac, Nigerian Americans have a higher income per household than white Americans. That's the same. That's also true for Ghanaian Americans. With West Indian Americans, they're closing the gap. And if you look at intact families, only in families that are not intact, where the daddy is missing or daddy was never known, that is really, if you look at whites, the gap is immense. There's also there's a disparity within the white community between people who come from intact families and people who don't. So I think that by looking at it just monolithically, we do an injustice to it. But there will be people so we'll be fighting this for a long time. And maybe you think I'm being too sympathetic to them. I think we need to put ourselves in their shoes. A lot of this is driven by envy. Please, I hate communists. Don't get me wrong. They are envious and all that, but a lot of them are good people who think this is a huge injustice. I believe they're wrong. I believe that the remedies for society are bad for society, and I'm going to have to fight them for the rest of my life. So I think it's never going to go away. This is a permanent battle. For me, it is, at least. Anyone else? Yes,
Yeah,
right there. This lady has a question. Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
just a question. The economic status of the U.S. is becoming tenuous in that we're importing so much stuff, and we no longer have technology to make penicillin, vitamin C over here anymore. It's all imported. And this could potentially lead to, let's say, some disruptions in the economic structure. Would Black Lives Matter and this critical race theory pounce on this idea when the economic structure splinters some?
Yeah, obviously, we saw with the George Floyd's video, and the death is harrowing. They are very opportunistic. They will try to pounce on anything. Alicia Garza, the main leader, one of the main leaders and founders of Black Lives Matter, was very clear when she told a bunch of main socialists in 2019, just 2 years ago, what we're talking about is dismantling the organizing principle of American society. What we seek is to dismantle the way we've organized as a society. She said that twice. And if that is their goal, then they will use any opportunity to dismantle who we are. Again, as I said, I will accept the imperfections that we have and everything. We are a good country. We're a good society. Immigrants like me or immigrants like Isaac can come in and flourish. And you know yourselves because you're here. So the short answer is yes. They would, if we had a chaotic situation, you can be sure that anybody who wishes us ill and wants to change our system would make use of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the pamphlet. We happen to be going to a meeting about school board candidates tomorrow night. And they are saying that they are in support of the same things that you're talking about. And I didn't know if you had some tips for us to stimulate this conversation.
That's the activist now.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's a great question. I think this is becoming more and more of a conversation at the school board level. I think what we want to begin to do is I think Mike kind of outlined some of the things. I think where we're seeing critical race theory find its way into the classroom is through a couple of different avenues. One is through grants. And so grants are becoming sort of a vehicle that fund different sort of operations within the school that allow CRT to make its way in the classroom. One that is a big one that Mike referenced is diversity, equity, and inclusion training for teachers. So I think one of the things for if you're going to be a school board member to be looking at is what are the contracts that we're making, what are some of the appropriations that we're making as a school board. And so really evaluating those. What are some of the, I heard a story from another parent where someone else in the community was providing the training at no cost to the school. So really having, I think, a healthy amount of oversight of, what are we putting in front of our teachers and what kind of expectations are we putting on them. I think the other place that you're often seeing it in the classroom is through social and emotional learning. That is, I think, the other place that you are oftentimes seeing that. So I think some of the conversations to be having with your school boards are, let's make sure that we're having a healthy amount of oversight in our budget. Let's be having some good oversight over, what we are doing in terms of curriculum, because I think the reality is sometimes this is also making its way into the curriculum as well. And so I think your best sort of line of defense is really just making sure that your school board members are prepared to just be active, to be engaged board members, to be involved and to ask questions, because I think that's going to bring some healthy conversations of what's making its way into our school administration and into our classroom, and to be able to identify some of the things that Mike highlighted.
By the way, I encourage you strongly to ask questions like this now that we have her here, because we want to empower you. Obviously, you can tell her domain is different from mine, but you know what, you don't have to ask a question about my presentation. I'm very happy to have given it to you. Ask questions of Stephanie, please, while we're here, because she's going to be able to empower you and give you tools.
And just for the benefit of our online listeners who I know aren't in studio with us and didn't get the handouts that we have with us, one of the things that we provided everyone is how to identify critical race theory. So if you go to heritage.org/CRT, one of the first things at the top of that website, you can download the brochure that highlights kind of those 5 things that Mike spoke about at the end of the presentation. So you can download a copy of that. The other thing that I'll just kind of, while I'm on resources, is saveourschools.com. For those of you who are online, or maybe those of you who didn't get a chance to grab the handout on your way in, that is a one-stop shop from Heritage Action to provide we've got a kind of a primer on critical race theory. We've got a different, some different tools and resources there as well. So that's just another quick plug of something else that may be of help to some of you.
Thank you. First, thank you very much for coming from out of town. And thank you for the book and brochures. First question, it says Heritage Action is organizing efforts to reject CRT and push for legislation to ban it from schools and government. Seems like that's the quickest way to do on a national basis. So that's the first thing. And plus, the second thing, is there any legal actions on a national basis winding its way up to the Supreme Court to ban critical race theory?
Yes, 2 really good questions. So I think there are, let me start with the litigation first, and then I'll talk a little bit about the legislative. So I know there are organizations that are working on the litigation piece of it. I think it's, I'm blanking on their name, but I know there is an organization that specifically has in mind litigation strategies.
Southeast Legal Foundation?
Yes, Southeast Legal Foundation.
Good people.
Good people. They are really working, I think, to think through sort of how do they get good cases into the courts to set some really good precedents, to really work for kind of the litigation strategy of this. So, looking at what are maybe some good circuits for us to be in, to get some good precedents set on the litigation front. On the legislative front, and that's more where I work at Heritage Action, there is the federal piece of it, and then there is the state piece of it. So on a federal legislation, Heritage Action has supported a number of bills that would address critical race theory.
Most of them. We worked with most of them, I think.
Yes. So
I have personally worked.
Yeah, Mike and
with
the
many
Heritage,
states.
yes, Mike and the Heritage Foundation analyst team really helped us put those bills together. So if you go to saveourschools.com, you can see kind of the list of what those bills are. The other thing that we have been doing kind of as we have the capacity and the doors of opportunity is to help state legislators as well. So we have provided model legislation. If you would like to see a copy of it, it's on the Save Our Schools website, to help people kind of understand sort of the best legislative strategies, because we also recognize that these bills are very likely to be challenged in court if and when they get across the finish line and are signed into law. And so I think from what we see, and I think what Mike and Jonathan Butcher at the Heritage Foundation have really suggested, is that we really highlight the fact that this is a violation of the First Amendment, the 14th Amendment, and of civil rights law. And if you're dealing with state legislation, I think you can draw the connection between both the federal and state civil rights law as well. So yes, we are definitely doing all that we can. I think a number of states passed bills this past session. More are still looking to do so. And I expect some states are part-time legislatures, so I expect we'll see another round next.
By the way,
next spring.
I must say that with these bills, we're very adamant. We do not want to ban CRT. I write about CRT. I write about CRT in the book you have in your hands. I don't want to see this book banned. Today, somebody from Purdue told me they just ordered for the library. I'm very happy. What we want to ban is the implementation of it that violates the law, as Stephanie said. Why not ban it? First of all, I'm not into banning ideas. I'm not in that business. Number two, we will lose the court of public opinion. Number three, we will lose in the courts if we ban this. We don't ban ideas in America. And for all these reasons, what we ban is not, and they can come back and say, you are crazy if you think we're assigning a 9,000 word essay by Derrick Bell to fourth graders. I read Derrick Bell and I take a lot of Excedrin every day because it's headache inducing. So, you know, they can come back and say, when they say we don't do CRT, that's what they mean. They're not assigning Kimberly Crenshaw, but that's fine. They're applying it. And that's, I explained how they're applying it. By the way, one more thing. If they say to you, that's not CRT, and you can't convince them, then the fallback position is, I'm sorry you don't know enough about this, but I don't care. Call it what you will. Call it Disneyland. It's illegal and it's disgusting, and I'm not gonna let you do it. So even if they say that's not CRT, and you can now win the argument with them because they're being obtuse, just say, okay, fine, it's not CRT. I'm sorry you don't know about this. I do, but I'm not gonna try to convince you. You still can do it, right? That's a winning argument.
Okay, we have a few online questions from viewers who are watching us online.
Sure.
I'm going to combine two questions from the same person. Part one, I'm running for school board in my hometown. I have seen the buzzwords on the school's website, but when you ask the current board members, CRT does not exist here. I need to get proof of it being in the school, but the leaders won't give me any information because I'm not a parent of a student. What do? I need another angle or action step. And then that same person in general asked, what does Heritage have available in terms of materials or education? I know, Stephanie, you mentioned saveourschools.com, but that same person was interested in anything that you could do to help.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think we have two things that will be helpful for them. One is a terms sheet of kind of just some common terms that characterize sort of the, critical race theory that is on the Save Our Schools website. The other thing that is on there is what's called a tip sheet for FOIAs. So at the federal level, it's called the Freedom of Information Act. Here in Ohio, I think we call it an open records request. So if your school is unwilling and failing to be forthcoming on information that you are requesting, you as a citizen of the state of Ohio have some legal ability to request certain information using that law. And so we have a tip sheet just to kind of give you some general principles of how to approach that in terms of how to be effective, how to get what you're asking or looking for. And then I think two, the other thing that is in that tip sheet is a direct link to the guide for your state specific law. So the Ohio Attorney General's office here in the state of Ohio has a guide that specifically answers maybe any questions that you might have unique to Ohio specific law, because every state has some slight variation to it.
Okay, thank you. We have one more question. I actually think this is a good question. I think to some degree you've covered it during the presentation, but maybe there's kind of the short elevator speech version of this, because I really think it's a good question.
Short for me, come on.
Yeah.
You guys know better than that now.
Okay, here's the question. People on school boards seem to assume that CRT is a continuation of the traditional civil rights movement. Can you explain the main differences? Why would MLK never support CRT?
So that is an outright lie. Critical race theory, critical race theorists have a lot of problems with the Civil Rights Act. basically it said it was, they say it was aborted when in that book that I show you, the big red book, they say it was aborted when not everybody was fired the day after LBJ signed the Civil Rights Act. What they wanted was the de-Baathification. Remember that term from the Iraq War when we got rid of the Ba'ath member parties in every aspect of Iraqi civil society? They thought that the same people who have been executing the law and administering the law and writing the law, the night that LBJ signed the Civil Rights Act, should not have held those positions. They also think that, so affirmative action, the racial preference of affirmative action come through a decision called the Bakke decision in 1978, 78, I think it was. And people like me hate it because we see it as a way to introduce racial preferences through the back door. They hate Bakke as well because they say that we made racial preferences really difficult. What they want is race-conscious policies. It's not a coincidence that Biden is signing these bills into law, that are a ginormous step backward. This is for the first time since 1964, and I've asked legal experts on this, that we have a president signing laws and we have people executing laws that are race conscious. We decided that was a bad decision. We decided that the Plessy era was bad. So no, they themselves don't see it as a continuation of the civil rights era. They think the civil rights era was aborted, and what they want is something different. They think that they hate the fact that the civil rights era promised colorblind policy. They say that was the beginning of the rot. Okay, that MLK promised civil rights policy. They hate that speech about his little children. I think that was the speech on the mall in 1963. So not at all. That's a canard. You have anything to add to this?
Yeah, Mike has a really good paper called Critical Race Theory in the New, I think it's in the New Intolerance. And I think one of the interesting things is he has several quotes in that paper from the critical race theorists themselves, very explicitly saying that they reject the civil rights movement and they believe that it doesn't go far enough, and that they don't, they see really that the answer is a more radical resistance or kind of, I mean, yeah, really.
Plus, the Civil Rights Act was not communist. And Julian Bond himself, who I referred to earlier, decries this. Decries the fact that we look to Gandhi rather than Marx, which he thought it was a big mistake. Anyone else? This lady, I think you had a question, right?
Excuse me, just a minute.
I have a big one. They need the online so that I can hear you.
I'm wondering why, if they're doing things against the law on the First Amendment, 14th Amendment,
Right.
how are they still getting? I mean, why isn't something being done that will stop it?
Sure.
Because we are going through a constitutional crisis. We are no longer applying the Constitution of '87. We almost have a rival constitution. We don't have normal politics. We have regime politics. And that is, what kind of regime is America going to be? And a lot of these things, and the courts have allowed these things to happen. And until we resolve this, I believe, and other people who are a lot smarter than me, I'm getting this from them, believe that we're going to have very unstable politics until we agree on what regime we're going to follow, the Constitution of '87 or this other, I've written papers on this, or this other constitution, which allows all this stuff. So the day of reckoning, I think, is coming legally and constitutionally. And by the way, when I say that, I mean peacefully. I don't think we're going to have, I want these things. One of the best things about America is that we resolve things peacefully rather than with a revolutionary junta. But we need to have a constitutional reckoning and begin to apply the law. I am standing every time and say, if you're an elected official, you have to apply the law. You have to apply the First Amendment, the 14th Amendment, Title VI, Title VII. And in this case, I forget which amendment it is, but which amendment is it that says the citizens have a right to redress governments? The fourth, right? But that's what I say to Merrick. Do you know? That's what we said to Merrick Garland today. You know, it's like, no, we have a constitutional right to redress. So you want to add to this?
Yeah, the one thing that I would add, and I think, you know, the reality is a lot of them are ignoring the law. And so I think one of the things that we're looking to do from a legislative strategy is to add enforcement mechanisms to essentially more compel them to follow the law. So for particularly, I think the way that you approach schools is if they violate, you know, the law, then they are subject to penalties and are subject to lose state funding. And so rather than just, you know, making a recommendation of this is what we think you should be doing, there's actually penalties for failing to comply with, you know, these are some of the things that you cannot do, and making it very explicit specifically for schools, and then creating penalties for failing to follow through.
We are out of time for questions. Mike and Stephanie.
Can I add something? How impressive is Stephanie Cruz? You've already clapped for me. Could you please clap for her? This is the first time I do an event with her. You're so impressive. Goosebumps saying this. You knocked it out of the park. You make me say, I didn't have to come out, you know, at all. I didn't have to get up at 3 a.m. Thank you very much. Thank you.
You both did a fabulous job. Thank you so much for coming in and covering this topic.
Thank you.
I just want to cover a few things before we go. We have a couple of signs, yard signs up here. This is one of them. If anybody wants to take one for their yard. And this is the other one. I know I'm not allowed to put signs in my yard, you know, but everybody doesn't have that stipulation. So if you'd like a sign, just come up and take one. I also, for those of you that were here on, what is today? Thursday night, we had problems with the sound in the studio, and I want to apologize for that. I did look at the class online today. I didn't get to look at all of it, but I kind of speeded through it to see if the sound was okay. So I would suggest you go online and watch that class again to find out what you missed. Also, I'm going to have Dan put Isaac's email up on the website for those of you that might want to send him something. Our online winner of the book, The Patriots, is Kathy P. at iCloud. I want to thank Karen for helping out tonight. And the only other thing I want to say is, since COVID happened, as a matter of fact, today when I heard that the DOJ was going to get involved with parents complaining about critical race theory, I decided to call COVID the insanity virus, because I feel like that's all we've gotten in the last year is insanity. But I do want to say one thing good, if there's anything good that it could have come out of that. I know people because of CRT that have woke up. It might have been another 5 or 10 years before they woke up. But parents getting involved in critical race theory and COVID and these mandates and treating unvaccinated people differently and what they're trying to do has awakened people. So I hope the mighty lion roars on very loud. Have a nice evening. Thanks for coming.